Hello friends, welcome to my Blender progress report video. Today I'm going to be showing what I was able to manage in 2 months on Blender, like the program, not a drug. And I learned almost nothing, but enough to make a few renders, which at the end of the day is what matters. So let's get into it. It all started a year before I got into Blender. I was trying to draw every single day, but I kept hitting the same wall. Zero motivation. I could never stick with any fandom long enough to draw for it daily. So I decided, well, I'll just make my own characters then. But the problem with having your own characters is that at least at the start, you're the only real fan of them. So I started missing that fandom aspect, and I realized I have to be the entire fandom. Just me, myself. But the problem is, I'm not exactly good at drawing or animating. At least back then. Right now, a little bit better. I first tried tweening. That was alright, but you have to kind of know how to separate the drawings so they still look lively and also just be good at art, which I'm not. Now, if I practice more, I could probably do it, but the problem with that is I am extremely lazy, and that usually ends up being the main issue that I run into. Right now on screen, I'm just showing all the different sketches that kind of got my characters going, because at first they were just kind of random characters that I just happened to draw. I just kind of draw whatever. And then I finally merged different designs together to come up with the final concept. Those other drawings were all drawings from my sketchbook. These are drawings I tried to refine from Sketchbook onto Procreate. So that's why hopefully they look a little better. Now, when I first tried tweening, I actually used All-Light Motion because I saw a lot of other people use that program. Except, I don't know if it does the same thing on Android, but on iOS it kind of forces you into free trial subscription, which seriously annoyed me. So I decided I would try it one time, and if I came into any problem with it whatsoever, I was going to immediately uninstall it. And within 5 seconds, I realized I absolutely hated it. And although the community does seem pretty decent, and it's got quite a few tutorials, I realized, why would I bother to learn it if it's something you always will have to pay for, you know? So then I realized, what can I use? And at this point, I had gotten a little bit, now that I remember, at this point, this is when I actually got into using Blender. And I was somehow able to put this together, which looks a lot better than the All-Light Motion thing I made, that's for sure. But you can see it's still pretty bad. In general, I watch quite a bit of TikTok and even YouTube Shorts at times. And I happened to come across low poly modeling, a short on it. I think it was just someone creating their original character into a model. I was thinking, wait, can I do that? And I remembered way back, years ago, I think around the time when VR chat had first come out, I had a friend that was really into VR chat. But back then, you know, there weren't all the free models that you could just put on. You had to kind of know how to rig stuff yourself or use those auto rigging websites. And me being a pretty stupid teenager, I just used the auto rigging websites. I couldn't figure out Blender. But I did try the donut tutorial, and I think I gave up on about the third video. Might have been the second. I definitely didn't get very far. But remembering that made it a lot easier to give Blender a second try because I figured there's no way it should be as hard as it was years ago. And I ended up being right. It wasn't that bad. Now this was my very first attempt back on Blender. I made this from, you'll probably recognize it if you know who Crash Rune is, because that's the tutorial I followed. Now I didn't follow the rest of the tutorial on this model. I only did the modeling part, none of the rigging or texturing or any of that. I only did the modeling. I think I changed it up a little bit from what they had on the tutorial. I think what's funny is that I have so many parts being used when I make models, I kind of just put everything into one cube unless it's like a whole separate object like glasses. So after I finished modeling that other model I just showed from the Crash Rune tutorials, I decided I know enough to hop into making my own model for my own reference images, and I ended up making this, which is it's really something. It's really something. I could say that. It's definitely not good, but it's something. It's a very early design of one of my characters, Lillian. Back when she had a yellow dress instead of a gray one, and flowers on her horns, and this thing, and a really messed up face. I didn't know about a lot of stuff that I do now. And also the clothes were kind of going through them. And again, I've used like 50 billion different objects. I don't do that anymore. And I believe I tried to rig her, but that is where things went horribly wrong. It just, I can't remember if I did auto weight painting or if I tried to weight paint this myself, but my goodness, it's quite bad. It's a lot worse than I remember it. I don't have any IK set up. I believe it's just FK here. So yeah, this is pretty atrocious. After completing that chibi model, I actually gave up on Blender for quite a few weeks because, I mean, that was difficult to make. But I came back with some new art and I decided, you know what? Let's make a full model because I didn't want to have to make a chibi model again. So I came back with making a full model of Lillian. And for this model, I went to use the same tutorial, but I realized why not try another one to see if I can get further with some more information. And I found tutorials by Sorry Stacy, which ended up being very, very helpful. And her video, I mean, it's definitely wasn't for beginners because there were some times where I was like, I have no clue what this person is doing. But after watching it a few times through and kind of watching some of the other videos the creator had linked in the description, I was able to finally figure out everything. And I made this, which is definitely a lot better than that other attempt. But still, compared to what I have now, it's still not great, but it's definitely much better. The weight painting's definitely not nearly as atrocious. And I actually have an IK and FK setup rig on this as well, which is definitely very difficult to learn. But now I'm able to do it quite well. So now that I've shown all my very early attempts, here is kind of what I was able to get done in my second month of Blender. All that other stuff, that was kind of first month, like the chibi project, that took a week. The second Lillian, the full non-chibi model, I think that took 2 weeks. I really had to figure out everything. And then in this last month, my second month of Blender, I was able to make a whole collection of chibi models of where I made my persona and my 4 main characters. Now, I made this persona character first of myself, which is also my PNG tuber. made that recently. And I made the mistake of doing an A pose, which looks fine like this, but for posing, I mean, I might have set up the bones wrong or something, but when it goes to pose, it looks horrendous. Looks bad. You can kind of fix it by doing that, but I mean, like, what is this? So seeing that, I mean, I did finish. What I did is I wanted every model, every character to have 3 outfits. So I did end up doing his 3 outfits with the A pose model base. But for my other 4 characters, I ended up changing it to a T pose base, which worked a lot better for me. But yeah, this was one of my first models I made when I came back for that second month of Blender. And it's kind of where I developed my style of making models. Like, if I highlight this, it's like all of this is from the same cube, and only the glasses are separately made. Now, what I do is I make the hair separate, the body will be all one piece, and then glasses be separate. And that's how I like to do it. It makes weight painting quite easy. And yeah, I usually keep the clothes directly on the model, because I realize when you don't, there's a lot more you have to deal with, and I don't like having to deal with clothes. They're actually very difficult. Now, this model was actually the second one I ever made, because I was like, I'm low-key a furry, so I need to be able to make furry models. Very important. So I decided, why not make it the second model I'll ever be making, on this chibi collection. And I had to watch some strange tutorials to figure out how to do this. Even the tutorials, I mean, they didn't even really help. So it's like I watched some very odd videos for kind of no reason. But they did help me figure it out myself. Because you see, I'm able to move the leg around and they stay on, randomly fly away. Because when I first tried to do this, these little fluffy pieces were kind of just flying into the middle of nowhere. They're flying all around him, which was kind of interesting, but it wasn't what I was going for. But yeah, I was able to finally figure out how to do it. You can see they also stay on the arm. Believe it or not, this is a male character. But, sometimes people like to dress how they like. And I made sure to make bro the cutest possible variation of himself. So I have 2 twin characters. This is Remy, male twin. And then I also have his sister, Lillian. Now her outfit, it doesn't have as much flair as Remy's. And for a good reason. Because he has to disguise the fact that he's actually a guy, where Lillian's just Lillian. So that's why I made sure to give him the extra cute outfit. No other reasons. That's strictly the reason why. So yeah, this is definitely my favorite model out of all of them. And then here I have my alien character. So I figured, would it not be cool to have an alien type of character in my lore? So I made Amelia the alien. Now, she does eventually get a human form, but when she first, if I ever make an anime or something, or webtoon or manga, whatever it is, when she first gets introduced, she's a straight up alien. But yeah, she gets a human form later, which I also made. For all my characters, I wanted to do 3 different outfits, but for her, she gets 4 because one of them's the alien form. And then this is her when she gets her human form. And lastly, I realized my twin characters, they're like half demon, half elf. Gotta be edgy, right? Can't be basic around here. Heck no. And then Amelia is a straight up alien. So I realized, Wait, I gotta have at least one human character, right? Not really, but I decided I want at least one human character. So that's when Vincent got introduced to the plot. He was actually the last character I came up with, but now I can't really imagine the plot without him, because he's kind of essential for Remy. Now, designing his character, the clothes, it made me want to figure out clothes physics. But then I realized that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother type of thing to learn. So I realized, yeah, never mind. I'll just go with whatever is good enough. And I found out some ways to do clothes without having to learn clothes physics, because there's no way. That is complicated. I tried it maybe once or twice and it just starts flying off the screen. And also, I even have a decent computer, I think, and it starts lagging like crazy. But to be fair, I didn't really look into how to do it. I just kind of tried it, and the attempt was bad. The attempt was made, but the attempt was bad, so I gave up. Now, the models I make, I don't even bother keeping the legs. Like, it just starts getting baked directly onto the model to save me the mental effort of having to figure out how to do all that. But this model does have it where you can pose his legs without the, not skirt, but I guess robe clipping everywhere. Just barely. I was somehow able to just barely figure out how to do that. But the little piece on top still doesn't behave very well. But it works good enough, Sometimes good enough is good enough. So that sums up my 2 months of Blender progress. And, as I do an outro here, I'll show some of the render pictures I made of my chibi collection. Because when I finish a project, I always make sure to make one render of it so it can sit in the file folder, so I can always look at it. My next main project will be to turn all of these chibi models into full-size models. Now that I've learned quite a proficient amount of information about Blender, I meant to make this video a lot sooner, but it ended up taking me much longer than I thought it would to set up everything that I wanted to set up. But now that I've done that, I actually already have 2 of the full-size models done, and I'm working on making the rest. And while I model all of my characters, I also am making animations, which I post to Shorts and TikTok. I try to make one a day, but it doesn't always work out. But that's been teaching me animation as well. Been nice, because that's kind of what I like to do. It's pretty fun. Here's the last picture I have, and I guess I'll see you in the next video, where I'll hopefully have my full-size model collection done.